Hello, my loves. Today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories, and if you've enjoyed a Reddit story, why don't you consider hitting the subscribe button? Maybe that's the notification bell too, and let's start with today's story. Friend didn't invite me to his wedding. My 30 years old friend, 29 years old, got married last month. He hadn't really shared much in terms of his wedding plans with me, and I assumed was having a low-key event with just family, which is why I hadn't been invited, and I was fine with that. Until he sent me a text apologizing for not inviting me, and that the event was for family and friends only. His reasoning was that he couldn't invite me because then, by extension, he'd have to invite the rest of the community that we associate with. I told him family and friends only. Got it. We are Bengali, and there is a large Bengali community where we live, but neither of us are really involved in the community. The only real participation is attending a funeral of a community member. I thought that was a weak, flimsy excuse considering our minimal involvement with the community, and then I heard from a mutual friend that a few community members were actually invited and attended, as his father is a big member of the community. In addition, some of the other friends he invited are those he met not too long ago, 1 to 2 years, versus knowing me for 20 years. As a grown man, I'm a bit ashamed to say that this hurt me quite a lot. I thought we were super close since we talk on a weekly basis, hang out often, and have been friends for 20 years. I have a small family and very few friends. I considered him one of my closest friends, and he would always tell me things like, "I know you have a small family, but think of me and my family as your family." I feel like he could have invited me privately if he was worried about having to invite the community. Which he ended up doing anyway by inviting some members. Funnily enough, some community members were surprised that I wasn't there, and I told them I wasn't invited. My family was also hurt and offended by this situation and know his family very well. Friend still texts me on a weekly basis like nothing happened since we have many common interests. I hardly reply, hoping for some advice on how to go about things. My close friend didn't invite me parents to his wedding but invited other friends and other community members. I, at 28F, have been seeing my ex, 33M, and don't know if I should break it off or try to fix things. Ex, 38 years old, and I am 28 years old, were in a long-term relationship that was majorly toxic. Both parties contributed to constant fighting, abusive threats, emotional manipulation, psychological abuse, cheating, etc. throughout the duration of this relationship. Before you write this story off and make the obvious comment that this relationship is unhealthy, just hear me out and put yourself in my shoes. I really love this man and in a lot of ways will always love this man. However, after years of putting up with toxicity and selfishness from him, I had finally had enough. Long story short, we moved out on our own and parted ways, except we never actually stopped talking or seeing each other. We go through phases where everything is wonderful, and then I'll find out that he's been looking for new connections on dating apps. When this happens, I tend to wander off and start talking to new people as well. Both of us act like this is unacceptable behavior even though we are not technically in an exclusive relationship. He will tell me how much he loves me, and then when we spend time together it seems like all we do is bicker or make jabs at each other. On top of that, there hasn't been any physical intimacy in weeks and he is pushing and pressuring me into it. I feel uncomfortable with this, but he makes a very fair claim that his physical intimacy is an important factor for him. It's clear that the correct answer is to break up and go no contact, but for some reason I just can't seem to do it. I clearly love him very much even if I'm not completely emotionally invested in the relationship right now, and we don't seem to be meeting one another's needs. I also don't trust his words because they don't seem to always match his actions. I truly don't know what to do or how to get through this. We have been terrible to one another and I feel this immense guilt in both leaving and staying. My friends and family can't stand him and vice versa. Does any of this stand a chance? I feel insane even asking this, but at the end of the day I love this man. Any advice, words of wisdom or commisery is welcomed. Ex and I had a toxic relationship but can't stop seeing each other. He ruined the relationship and I ruined the breakup. I feel like I'm either stuck in a cycle of abuse or that maybe I am the abuser. Story: I, at 28F, don't know how to mend my relationship with my ex, 33M. Ex, 33 years old, and I am 28 years old, were in a long-term relationship that was majorly toxic. Both parties contributed to constant fighting, abusive threats, emotional manipulation, psychological abuse, cheating, etc. throughout the duration of this relationship. Before you write this story off and make the obvious comment that this relationship is unhealthy, just hear me out and put yourself in my shoes. I really love this man and in a lot of ways will always love this man. However, after years of putting up with toxicity and selfishness from him, I had finally had enough. Long story short, we moved out on our own and parted ways, except we never actually stopped talking or seeing each other. We go through phases where everything is wonderful and then I'll find out that he's been looking for new connections on dating apps. When this happens, I tend to wander off and start talking to new people as well. Both of us act like this is unacceptable behavior even though we are not technically in an exclusive relationship. He will tell me how much he loves me and then when we spend time together it seems like all we do is bicker or make jabs at each other. On top of that, there hasn't been any physical intimacy in weeks and he is pushing and pressuring me into it. I feel uncomfortable with this, but he makes a very fair claim that physical intimacy is an important factor for him. It's clear that the correct answer is to break up and go no contact, but for some reason I just can't seem to do it. I clearly love him very much even if I'm not completely emotionally invested in the relationship right now, and we don't seem to be meeting one another's needs. I also don't trust his words because they don't seem to always match his actions. I truly don't know what to do or how to get through this. We have been terrible to one another and I feel this immense guilt in both leaving and staying. My friends and family can't stand him and vice versa. Any advice on how to leave, get over this, or even fix this is encouraged. Ex and I had a toxic relationship but can't stop seeing each other. He ruined the relationship and I ruined the breakup. I feel like I'm either stuck in a cycle of abuse or that maybe I am the abuser. Story: feeling unappreciated and neglected in 6-year relationship, seeking advice. My fiancé is 35 years old and I am 29 years old, have been fighting more recently because his actions seem selfish. We've been together for over 6 years, but I feel like a broken record constantly repeating myself without any change from him. I've asked him to learn how to cook and be more considerate in the bedroom. He doesn't cook at all and when he tries, it's a disaster. In the bedroom, he always finishes, leaving me unsatisfied. Only recently has he started to clean up after himself because he was disgusted by his own bodily fluids. He hasn't matured much and still expects me to handle most things. When I went on a 6-month work trip, I hoped he'd learn to be more self-sufficient. Instead, he left the fridge untouched and didn't make any effort to cook, despite promising to make my favorite dishes. When I come home late from work in the gym, I often find him on the couch playing video games or watching TV, with nothing prepared. This frustrates me, especially since he doesn't take any initiative. Each year I've become more vocal about my needs and frustrations, which has led to more arguments. I feel like I'm talking to a toddler, reminding him to treat others how he wants to be treated. He often damages my things and tries to make up for it with money, but that doesn't solve the problem. I'm torn about whether to stay with him. My family loves him and I don't like to share anything bad about my relationships with anyone, even my friends. I can't imagine life without him, but I'm tired of feeling unappreciated and neglected. I'm seeking therapy to sort out my feelings and figure out the best path forward. I feel like I've tried everything and made every initiative. I'm tired of being sent memes in hopes of me forgiving him. I wish he'd stop apologizing and actually solve problems with me. My fiancés and I have been fighting more. I handle most of the chores and feel unappreciated. He doesn't take initiative in cooking or in the bedroom. Considering whether to stay with him and seeking therapy to sort out my feelings. Story: my husband told me he also loves someone else. My husband, Grant, 33 male, and I, 30 female, have been together for 12 years, married 3. We originally were living in my home state but moved to his after his parents' health started to take a decline. We've been living here for several years now. In that time I met a girl, 26 female, at work about 3 years into us moving, and after bringing her around me, my husband and her were all friends. We had a period where we didn't talk with her for maybe 2 years due to issues in our relationship with how my work was going, and her with a toxic friend group. TBF, we should have stayed and helped her out, but my husband and I were having a tough time barely seeing each other. Eventually we reconnected at the beginning of the year, and we would bring her out of her house to hang out and let her decompress from home life. A few months ago I noticed Grant was a lot more silent than normal, barely texting when we were at work and being somewhat physically distant. I eventually asked him what was wrong, and he said he was going through some mental issues. We both are diagnosed depressed, so I thought it stemmed from that. We made up, but there's still a very subtle hint of tension. When hanging or chatting in person, Grant is reserved, not as much in chat but definitely in person. I noticed in our friend chat he was the one more likely to initiate conversation than when it was just us, and I thought he was just trying to help keep her occupied. He initiated hangouts, which was weird because we were both home buddies. It started to nag at me when we would all hang out, and he would buy things for her too. I'm the one in the friend work group that people go to for advice, so I tend to pick up on things more than others, and about a month ago it sort of dawned on me that there was more than friendship there, at least from him. Recently, Grant was even more in his thoughts, and it was concerning me. I eventually got him to start talking, and at first he was very vague, and kept insisting he loved me. I didn't doubt that, but I had to guess he had feelings for someone, and guess again it was our friend. My heart sank when he acknowledged it, because it seemed like at first he couldn't admit it to himself. He eventually told me that he sort of figured it out when I confronted him about the distance, and had been battling with himself on how to tell me. He did insist he did not love me less, but loves her the same as me. I'll be honest, I'm probably still in shock and I'm not sure how to process. I feel like I should have been mad when he told me, but I can't bring myself to be. I'm not mad at her because she doesn't know. She's also in a relationship of her own and has never really expressed interest in anybody but the person she's with. And I understand people can love differently and the same for different people. We both just didn't think we would have to deal with this. I'm just not sure how to proceed. This man is the love of my life, and I don't think I can feel the same way I do for him as someone else. Leaving him isn't an option for me. I just need a way to navigate this. Story: spouse is a chronic complainer. He does not see it this way. What is normal? I'm 33 years old. Spouse is 31 years old. Spouse complains about lack of sleep constantly. He's a chronic complainer but doesn't see it this way. What is normal? For context, we have an almost 3-year-old and my husband works from home. Since our child has been born, he's been the primary caretaker because I leave to a medical office Monday through Friday for work and am home by 4 p.m. to take over. He works overnight. He absolutely refuses outside help even now with his mom who's recently moved into town. He essentially has to function off of at best 3 to 6 hours of broken up sleep spread across pre-shift and post-shift. I absolutely get it. I've acknowledged how crappy this schedule is and continue to make effort to provide him relief here and there, like leaving early from work, taking PTO, etc. And genuinely, when I know for a fact he didn't sleep well or had a terrible day where he has to function off of the bare minimum, I don't care if he says a complaint or two about being exhausted. However, this is an everyday thing. It is the theme of our conversation 80% of the time. If it's bath time or having family time, it's an ever-revolving wheel of very negative ick about grocery shopping. I'm exhausted. And usually his complaints tie to our child. He woke up too early this morning and I'm too exhausted, then rants about how he doesn't know how he's going to function for work. Or it's I couldn't sleep well because of their tantrum. The big picture here is that the reason why he's not getting enough sleep is because of our child's schedule. Just like any parent. But to complain about it nearly all day and all night long. Last winter he spent the entire 3 months complaining on how cold it was, begging every night for the summer to get here. He complained nearly every single day and night how it affected his back, and he'd at least once a day make a comment about praying to the God for summer to get here. We live in a southern state, so once it got here it was hot. What does he end up doing? Complains every day how hot it is. How miserable he is. How he can't work in the garage well because of how hot it gets in there. He works in the garage to take meetings so he doesn't wake up our child, and now I've had a bad taste in my mouth because, didn't you ask for this? He's also extremely unpleasant to be around in the state where he's in his complaining mode. I want to know, am I just being insensitive? He says that his entire childhood family did this. They'd just complain to each other as if it was a fun pastime hobby or something. In my household growing up, it was seen extremely negatively. You'd come off ungrateful, as a non-doer, and nut up shut up type household. I need some desperate insight. I have tried the shoulder or solution. His answer to that was he never wants a solution. He just wants to complain. Is chronic complaining totally normal? Again. He doesn't even use the word complaining. He sees it as a fun pastime and a way to be supported. Story, my M29 girlfriend, F29, is continually getting upset at me. I am 29 years old. Recently began seeing a girl 27 years old from Mexico. Lately, I dread going out with her because there's always an issue. This week, I added her to my gym membership and yesterday invited her to go work out together. We were supposed to meet outside at around 5:30 p.m., but she didn't arrive until about 6:15 p.m. and since she doesn't have a phone right now, I had to wait outside the entire time. After our workout, I went to change while she finished jogging. She asked if I was going to take a shower because she was, and I said no. I asked if she minded if I waited next door at a bar where my friends work at, assuming she'd be 20 to 30 minutes, but she got annoyed, so I waited outside the changing room for her. After 15 minutes, she came out, and I suggested an Uber to her place. She got mad we weren't going to the bar next door. I explained I thought she'd be longer, which is the only reason I mentioned it, and didn't mind going, but that I couldn't stay late as I needed to be up early. She gave me attitude and was dismissing me, so I just ordered the Uber. At her place, I stayed longer to let her cool down, and we talked outside. She accused me of not wanting to be seen with her and not communicating properly. I explained I never planned to go out after the gym and had told her I wouldn't be able to stay out late. She accused me of lying since it was 10:45 p.m., saying we had time to go out the bar. I told her I stayed to let her cool down and talk and that I originally planned to be home by 9 p.m. because I'm usually asleep by 9 p.m. and wake at 5 a.m. We talked for almost an hour, and when I went to call a taxi, she accused me of always running away whenever we talk. I explained I had to be up early and she insisted she knew that, and wasn't trying to keep me. I eventually called the taxi and left, getting home after 12 p.m. and did not fall asleep until after 1 a.m. I don't know what to do anymore. No matter what I do, she finds something to be upset about. Do I just end the relationship? Or is it this salvageable? The following are just a few of the things she's accused me of or gotten upset over. Got upset after our first date because she saw me out with a female friend a week later. Got upset when I invited her to my place to go for a walk in a nearby park to see a lake she said she wanted to visit. Supposedly I wasn't respecting her integrity as a woman and people may get the wrong impression. This was before we were official. Upset that I wasn't picking her up and dropping her off for our dates, even though I don't drive. Didn't hold her hand while walking. I stopped by a bar after work where my friends work and she accused me of going there to spend time with my ex since she also works there, wasn't working there that night. Got upset when I told her I wish I could run my hand across her body supposedly after 2 months of seeing each other. That's too intimate of a thing to say. Got upset when I indicated that her skin tone was slightly darker than mine and she accused me of being racist towards South Americans after she was just comparing the fact that I get sunburnt and she doesn't. Walked ahead of her after an outdoor movie where I got bitten over 40 times by mosquitoes. I wanted out of there. My girlfriend is continually getting upset at me and accusing me of things. I really like her, but I'm at my wit's end. Story, my 20F girlfriend, 20F, is not responding, but I can't tell if she ghosted or something happened. Is there anything else I can do? Advice on moving on from this? What do you think happened? My girlfriend, 20 years old, has been radio silent for 3 weeks and I'm at the point of considering it a ghosting, but the suddenness of it has me so worried I find it impossible to just move on from her character. We matched on Tinder about 3 months ago, real romantic, and were only official for about a week before she disappeared. We had been going on weekly dates since we matched, most of these lasting close to 12 hours as we'd get lunch, go for a 4-mile walk, and talk. She brought me a flower she picked on almost every date and has been incredibly considerate and sweet. Our interests are very different, but that didn't hold us back as we could carry a conversation about anything and found things to do together we both enjoyed. She grew up in a small, rural town and comes from a homophobic family who she is not out to yet as she has reason to suspect they may disown her and plans to wait a few more years. She had been hoping to get off work to visit family for the 4th. My last message before she disappeared was asking if she would be able to. I never received confirmation that she was, but I assumed that she did and was not responding due to travel and family, and initially that she had decided to extend her trip when the silence carried on through the weekend. No social media. A combination of her upbringing being largely analog and being a comp sci major giving her the ick towards social media. She's not on anything but Indeed for school, networking. I have attempted to add her on Indeed in case there is a phone-related reason we have lost contact, and at least if my connection is rejected I know she doesn't want to talk but is alive. The message has been pending for just under a week. I also sent a message on Tinder with my hashtag because we exchanged those in person, but she deleted the app and doesn't appear to have been on, and if her account is with her number and that changed she wouldn't have access to that either. She did not always text every day. I did not mind this as we had outstanding conversation in person and she showed her interest face to face rather than digitally. But this did leave sometimes a gap of a day, maybe two, where I would not hear from her, even on her day off, and when she did text, it was usually for a few minutes and she'd be unreachable again for about 24 hours. This was probably my biggest discomfort with the relationship, which I had intended to discuss the next time we saw each other, and may be the reason that most heavily influences my belief she ghosted. I do not know her apt. There were at least 2 dates where we sat in my car for an hour, talking when I dropped her off, but she did not invite me up or tell me the for future reference. I interpreted this at the time as it being late, 10 p.m. 12, and her not trying to keep me as I always worked the next morning, not wishing to insinuate more by inviting me up. The last time I saw her I said if we were going to chat for an hour so often she'd have to invite me soon. BC the car was uncomfortable, but that I wasn't inviting myself up. She chuckled and said okay. She did not initiate hand-holding or the few kisses we had, but her face lit up when I asked to. When I asked if there was a reason she had not been initiating she said she did not want to make me uncomfortable, something I would attribute to a homophobic upbringing I can relate to but have personally much more overcome. We only became official on our last date, about 5 days before she disappeared. She has Android, my texts don't say delivered to any Android friends, but her phone still rings before voicemail when I call so I do not believe I am blocked. Which means calls and texts just asking if she was okay went through and were ignored. Kind of hard to believe she would do that, even if she did not want to speak with me. And if she doesn't want to speak with me, why am I not just blocked? I have Apple, is there an indicator I've been blocked that I'm missing? She has had relationships before, at least 2, so homophobia has not held her back in the past. She identifies as a lesbian and appears to have no shame or trepidation with it. I am concerned however if it came up while she was home for the 4th somehow and if there was some sort of intervention, those can be bad. She had recently been diagnosed with a heart murmur, which a doctor just determined to be harmless, but I can't stop worrying something happened in relation to this. I asked her 4 to 5 dates in what she was looking for. The answer was a committed relationship. We had a laugh that we'd both attempted casual in the past but did not have the capacity to date casually. She acknowledged that she may not have time for dates weekly when school started, but that she would focus on getting a car so she could more easily come to my side of town rather than bus or Uber. BC she felt bad. I was making the full commute and would drop her off at home after. What I gleaned from this is we had agreed on our intentions and were beginning to solidify future plans, intentions. As stated above, she brought me flowers, and she was first to pick up the check, which I reciprocated the next date, so she shouldn't have felt I was taking advantage. We were taking turns. Both I would consider strong indicators someone is invested because they are showing commitment through actions that are not required of them. We had been making plans for the Renaissance Fair and she was planning her costume as well as the expense and how she could invest in something more pricey if she could also wear it in her regular rotation. I would consider this another sign of intending on at least a near future together because of how much thought she was putting into plans. I looked her up online for any obituaries, there were none, but the website I was forwarded to was Truthfinder, which notified me she was flagged as being on a government watch list. I was not looking for this information, but, what? I wondered if this was related to the screening process for her military application, but according to the definition on the site that shouldn't be the case. I'm not about to pay the website money for her information so I do not know the details of the watch list, but an address with her hometown was attached to her name and phone number so I'm fairly confident it is really her. I don't even know how this could be related other than making the disappearance around the time she was supposed to go home so much weirder. The site does say this does not indicate criminal activity, could be related to someone she knows, or just reasonable suspicion without any wrongdoing. We became official on our last date. On this date, we talked about a number of things before starting a relationship, including her interest in joining the military, our relationships with our parents, communication, and exclusivity. When I inquired upon her interest in the military, and let her know the long distance required of the branch she was considering did not align with my lifestyle goals, I had been worried we might be at an impasse that would end our relationship. Instead, she backpedaled that she was not fully decided yet and open to being swayed. Her mom was already convincing her not to. Discussing our relationships with our parents is when she confirmed she intends to tell her parents in the future, but not for a few years, and said she'd be willing to talk more about family at a later date, not dinner, understandably, but therefore indicating future opportunity to discuss. On the topic of communication, she admitted it came less naturally to her, whereas I have no issue bringing attention to topics which need to be discussed, even when I don't want to. I said I'd be okay with it if she felt more comfortable discussing things on a call or over text, to which she said no, she wanted to handle serious conversations in person. Finally, on the topic of exclusivity, this was after she had confirmed she wanted to be in a relationship with me. She was the one who said exclusivity would be a non-negotiator for her, which I agreed to. It's what I wanted as well. On our last date, she looked me in the eye and said she felt so secure in our relationship, she wasn't used to it, but she was very happy about it. The last time I heard from her, she gave me the dates she would be available for a trip we were planning to take together. I had messaged to ask if she really wanted to go and didn't feel pressured, as she'd missed texting one day. We texted back and forth the next, then she missed two more, but she responded that she definitely wanted to go. Her boss had not given her the time off she requested for our trip, but she gave me the days that would work for her with the intention to trade some shifts. My response to her was that I would hold off further planning until she had secured the shifts, then we could discuss hotels and packing. And lastly, an inquiring message as to whether she had been given the time off to visit family, which she never responded to, so I had assumed the answer was yes, and that was the reason for her sudden silence. After a week of no responses to a few messages and calls just asking to know she was okay, I accepted that, if she had not responded yet, more attempts would not help. I'm sure she isn't getting my messages for one reason or another. My last message can be summarized as, if she wishes to ghost, I can respect that. I would however like to know she is okay, and would appreciate confirmation she wishes to terminate our relationship as we agreed to exclusivity. In case I do not hear from her, I gave her a date upon which I would be considering this a breakup. I have a brief message planned that I intend as my last correspondence upon that date, summarized as, I'm taking this as a breakup as there is nothing more I can do. I'm sad as this meant a lot to me, and if she ever sees the message, I would like to know that she is alright. I'm also leaving the door open as I do not wish to break up, I just don't know what more I can do. I don't want to bother her in case she did suddenly decide she wanted to go no contact. I truly just want to confirm that she is alright. It's hard to move on when I can't stop waiting, worrying I'll get a call from her in the hospital. The other night I had a nightmare about it. I know this will pass, but it's been awful trying to move on. I can typically see a ghosting coming and it doesn't faze me, I just move on and don't waste my time. I'm wishing she rejected me to my face so I could stop worrying. As of Monday, I'll be taking it as a breakup, but it really doesn't feel like one, so I feel weird about it. I'm doing okay, by the way. I went on the trip by myself since I never heard from her. I got to see a bunch of cool stuff. I have a great support system which I've been utilizing. I'm keeping active and have a lot going well for me right now. I don't think there's any more I can do, just move on like I've begun to, I guess. Story: I feel like my best friend, 21M, is jealous of my GF, 21F, and I don't know if I should keep being friends with him. Hello everyone, I am 21 years old, have a best friend 21 years old, and we have been friends since high school, so for about 5 years. He has gone to a different country, but he still visits pretty often, so we get to see each other every 2 to 3 months. My friend is gay, and I am a straight man. At the same time, I have a girlfriend 21 years old who I have been dating for 3 years. He doesn't really support our relationship because he thinks that since I started dating her we don't really spend time. Which isn't exactly true, but it did play some sort of role. We obviously used to spend more time together when we went to school every day and had nothing to do, versus now would I have a relationship and I live with my GF, and also I have a full-time job which takes most of my day. I never thought that he was jealous of my girlfriend, but lately when I took a deeper look into his behavior, I noticed that he is acting sort of strange. Firstly, he dislikes my girlfriend even though she did nothing to him. In fact, she even baked cinnamon rolls for him once when he came over to our flat. After that, He did not even say thank you to her, which sort of offended me. Secondly, when I told him that I went on a trip for my GF's birthday, he didn't seem happy for me at all. He did not ask me how it was, all he said was that he wanted to go on a trip with me and asked me why I didn't go with him instead. I honestly was surprised by his reaction because I wouldn't have reacted this way to my friend. Thirdly, he often makes remarks about my body and jokingly insinuates that I should break up with my GF. When I confronted him about all of this, he said that he has no problem with my GF, but he thinks that I don't spend enough time with him. I don't know what to think of these, but he is the only friend I have in the city, which makes me feel even more alone. I feel like he doesn't value me as a friend and he has weird motives towards me. My best friend of 5 years is acting strange towards me and my relationship and seems like he is jealous of my girlfriend. Story: I don't want a relationship with my sister, what do I do? My brother is associating with our half-sister, I don't care to, and it's becoming uncomfortable. I'm typically pretty loquacious, so I'll try to cut it down. I am 38 years old, grew up with both my parents, and 36 years old my younger brother. My dad was married before my mom and had 2 kids, a son and a daughter, both of whom are about 10 years older than me. Not super relevant, but my parents divorced when I was in college. My understanding is that my dad wasn't perfect, but his ex was vindictive and fed my half-siblings a bunch of crap so they'd hate him, which worked for a while. Eventually, my half-bro reconciled. I guess my half-sis did to some extent, because I met her and her husband when I was a teen. It was easy to form a friendship of sorts with my half-brother because we had similar interests. I think his sister never fully came around to my dad, which, whatever. Reader's Digest version is that I have a fine relationship with half-bro and, for most of my life, no contact with his sister. Recently, my younger brother got all 4 of us together. It was a fine time. I enjoy hanging out with my brothers and the half-sister seemed fine enough, besides lightly shit-talking my dad, despite not talking to him for decades. Her son was super nice and I thought we all had a good time. At the end of the night, I was completely blindsided by her suggesting we should have a heart-to-heart of sorts. I know my younger brother had a convo with her about. I honestly don't know what, but anyway. I have no investment in that relationship. I absolutely meant no offense, but I told her I didn't feel it was necessary, but we could, if it would make her happy. I definitely admit that that seems a bit harsh, but I didn't intend it to be. I have no problem with her, but I also don't have the emotional and mental bandwidth right now to try to form a new relationship, let alone one I don't care about. And I don't feel compelled to put myself out for it. I'm nearly 40, she's never made an attempt at a relationship before and that's fine. I only mean to say that she didn't spend her life pining for a relationship with her half-sister, and that absolutely does not hurt my feelings. She was evidently very offended. My younger brother invited me to another gathering and while I'd love to go, I don't want to deal with her. She's rather dramatic and I anticipate an issue with us both being there. My ideal scenario is getting her to understand that we are basically strangers, and I like hanging out with her, but we're not family and I don't care for us to be. Kind of makes the gathering complicated. For what it's worth, I understand how this sounds, but I hold no animosity towards her. It is truly complete indifference, and I have too much on my plate right now to feign caring. So, I'm not sure how to proceed with the invite. Story: it's the 45th time within 2.5 months I started crying because I don't feel smart enough. Imposter. Hey, me 30 years old, am dating someone 22 years old since 2.5 months. Yes, the age difference was unexpected. I look younger, he looks older, so we both thought we are 25 on 26. But that's not the problem here. He is very genuine, rational, smart, active in society, etc. We met at some critical theory workshop in Berlin. I figured, he won some national competition in sociology and is studying politics and philosophy. When we are together, except at these situations when I start overthinking and then crying, we have the best time in our life. We vibe a lot, have the same sense of humor, trust each other, prefer STH more than vanilla, and I feel very comfortable by his side. But there is this one thing, my therapists could not really help me with yet, so, he likes talking about philosophy and I learn a lot and love it. At the same time, when he says something and I don't have a smart answer, it already happened a few times that I started crying, fearing he would figure out sooner or later that I was not as knowledgeable as he was. More like average, but not a prodigy who reads as many books as he does, etc. I studied law, am doing my PhD, and am very interested into philosophy and politics, but don't have so much time as to indulge super deep in it. I did have good grades, achieved quite some things, but BCPF childhood, which I apparently did not process completely yet. I think I only deserve love when successful and smart. When I cry, he is super kind and calms me down, saying I was smart and did not have to say anything. However, since it happened quite often now, he does say that he does not feel comfortable when it happens so often, which I totally get. I would question myself as well, if my partner was crying BC of me. Any advice on how to stop crying, regain my self-confidence? I am scared this will become a self-fulfilling prophecy and I will somehow fuck it up. Indeed, just today, when I cried again, I said, maybe I need a partner who is less smart, which, obviously, hurt him a lot. That he communicated clearly, saying it was not cool. I tend to do these things to protect me and rather fuck it up myself than to let somebody dump me, which is very psycho, I know, and I am scared it happened in the first place. I think I van control myself in not saying something similar like that again, especially since I don't want no other, but about the crying, I am not sure. My partner is very knowledgeable in philosophy and, from time to time, passionately tells me something about this topic. I find that fascinating, but at the same time, I start overthinking, thinking I don't know as much as he does and he will break up with me once he finds out. Imposter. Story: my brother is abusing drugs and breaking the law. I don't know what to do. Hello, I am 23 years old. My brother, 18 years old, was just caught by me and my parents doing hard drugs yesterday right after a cop came to our house to give him a warning because he got caught violating his restraining order by bringing an underage girl into the house. He started acting weird 6 months ago when he met a new friend group. My parents gifted him a car when he turned 18 and he crashed it, making it undrivable. He then started using my mom's car, which he then totaled. And then finally he stole my dad's brand new Tesla in the middle of the night with a bunch of underage kids and his friend Billy. Turns out he's the supplier and drove it into a tree, totaling it. Since then he was been sneaking people into the house, mostly an underage girl 15 years old who's my dad's best friend's daughter, which he claims he's in love with. The family put a restraining order on my brother so they wouldn't contact each other, but they still do, and he got caught by the cops because she snuck into the house to bring my brother drugs. I discovered this because he left his Snapchat open on his computer after we caught him with the hard drugs. Ever since the first accident, I had been begging my parents to give him consequences for his actions, but they continued to ignore my pleas until the final car was smashed. Since then, we have been arming the house with Ring cameras, sensors, and alarms. As of now, my dad has probably spent almost $1,000 on new security alone. My parents are saying they want to section my brother Section 35 Massachusetts, but I really hope they actually put him in rehab or inpatient. I hope they actually go through with it. My brother was a quiet, sweet, and sensitive person with not a lot of friends before this happened, and now it's like talking to a zombie who won't stop lying. I don't know what to do with myself. I find myself getting angrier and angrier at him and I feel guilty. He won't stop lying about everything with sometimes a shit-eating grin. Last night he jumped out of an 8-foot window in the middle of the night. I can't get a night's rest without an alarm going off, and am having extreme anxiety and paranoia. I don't know how involved I should be in this. I feel like a parent at times. I don't know how I should be reacting/treating my brother. I want to move out, but I feel bad leaving my little sister, 13 years old, to deal with this alone, and my dad also has been saying he doesn't want me to. I really do want to leave, but I don't know if it's the right thing to do. My brother is abusing drugs, smashing cars, messing with underage girls, and I don't know what to do. Story: how to bond with my boyfriend's 32M friends, including his ex, without letting it affect our relationship. My boyfriend, 32 years old, and I am 29 years old, have been together for about a year and recently moved in together. He's been connecting with his friends after a year and a half of distancing due to mental health issues. One of his friends is his ex-girlfriend, who had a toxic end to their relationship. She recently sent him an emotional email, and I suspect she might still have feelings for him, which makes me uncomfortable. He reassured me there's nothing to worry about, but I want advice on how to bond with his friends and navigate this situation without letting it affect our relationship. I'm 29 years old and my boyfriend is 32 years old. We started to date sometime around this month last year. Found each other on a South Asian dating app. We had a fair share of ups and few downs, but we love each other to bits. Loyal to each other, and we want to start a life together. We recently moved in together as well, and our parents are supportive of this. My boyfriend was not doing okay mentally for quite some time and distanced himself from his friends for about a year and a half. Completely absent without leave. They tried reaching out but gave him space. One of the persons from the friend group was his ex-girlfriend. They dated for about 2 years. It got really toxic towards the end from what he told me, since she started to force him into marriage very early on during the relationship as she was 3 to 4 years older to him. Although he liked her, he wasn't ready for a lifetime commitment, especially if it was that forced. He tried to tell her, but she never really understood, would also sometimes cry about her ex whilst living with him. She couldn't secure a job, so no financial support to pay rent, so she asked to live with him even after he decided to part ways with her. He agreed since it was a tough time for everyone. Some forms of intimacy continued, but he expressed the discomfort he was facing that this was happening and that it's not good for either of their mental state if they decided to part ways. She then moved out, but reached out to him to give it another chance, and this time with no pressure of marriage. Skip. She now is married to a dude who she found through a dating app. We also recently met his friends, after he broke 1 year of long-lost silence with them. Everyone's extremely happy to see him and angry for ghosting. Basically everyone expressed happiness because they were meeting me for the first time, but I didn't see any kind of emotions from his ex-GF who was also present there with her husband. She only spoke about food with me, didn't try to get to know me at all. She just asked him how he was. Basically very minimal talks and emotions. Apparently, just a year back, she sent him another huge email, expressing how she terribly missed him, how she missed his laughter and late-night talks, missed having him in his life. That he should stop ghosting her and talk and still be great best friends with her, how they used to be. I can't help but think that she still has feelings for him, and that is somehow not sitting very well with me. Especially now that we'll be hanging out with the gang often. I don't want to let this affect anything because he really needs his friends, and so do I need this social connection. I have no complaints about my BF. He's the greenest flag out there. He is extremely honest about everything, and I expressed this to him. He saw where I was coming from and rest assured me that we have no control over this and to not let this affect me. I will try to heed to that, but I just want to know if I'm crazy to think this about her. Story: my 27M partner, 26F, keeps threatening our relationship and lashing out. How do we address it? I am 27 years old, have been with my partner 26 years old for over a year now. The first time we met, we clicked instantly. We have the same sense of humor, have the same hobbies, and we share similar life goals. She is enthusiastic, wholesome, charismatic, the list could go on. I love her dearly, and she makes me happier than anyone else ever has. My parents and friends love her too. Everyone in my life is supportive of our relationship and are happy for us. In all honesty, I am the happiest version of myself. But the last 6 months have been going downhill. We have been getting into arguments. The topics of the arguments are normal and nothing too serious, but the issue lies in how we argue. When we have an argument, she loses her temper. She loses track of the goal and she stops being constructive and cooperative with me. She lashes out at me and says things in the heat of the moment just to harm me or our relationship. Her lashing out isn't limited to when we fight either. She has anxiety and panics sometimes. For example, we were late to the airport recently and she started getting nervous. And while I wasn't doing anything wrong or anything to upset her, it's unavoidable for me to be in the firing line when she lashes out because she's panicked. In the last 6 months, when we've had arguments, there have been a handful of times when she's threatened our relationship. I don't believe she threatens our relationship in a manipulative or controlling way in order to get what she wants. I believe she does it because she goes into self-destruct mode. No matter the reason, I told her that is unacceptable. I seriously talked to her about this back in March and told her how it makes me feel and that she can't do it. She agreed at the time. However, she threatened the relationship again in May. After then, we had a more serious conversation about how I would have no choice but to break up with her if she kept threatening our relationship. I also said she needs to stop lashing out at me. I explained my reasoning to her, and she totally agreed and apologized after she had calmed down. However, lo and behold, last weekend, she threatened our relationship again. Now, I don't know what to do. I told her I would break up with her if she did it again. What kind of precedent would I set if I didn't follow through? I love her so much, but logically I don't see how I can spend my life with someone who acts like this. I don't think we can disagree in a mature manner. I feel like I'm constantly in the firing line. I feel like we are not a team. For all the laughter, joy, and happiness we have together, it's always in the moment. I recognize I might be in denial about the future, and that I'm clinging on the happy moments and dissociating from the bad moments. Our relationship feels volatile and insecure. I don't know how I can build a future with someone who makes me feel like we're on the rocks every couple of months. I've also now lost my optimism and have no faith that she will change. She brings me happiness, but she doesn't bring me peace and security. I don't see how I can build a future with someone without peace and security. But, having said all of this, 90% of the time when we're not fighting, I am the happiest version of myself. That is because of her, and it breaks my heart having to leave her. Surely, turning your back on someone you love and someone that makes you happy can't be the answer. I'm stunned with indecision at the moment. Does anyone know how to address this in a healthy way? I'd really appreciate any advice. I told my partner we would break up if she threatened our relationship again. Now she has. I don't want to break up. Story, I, F, 30, don't know how to cope with my boyfriend, M, 41, of 2 years and his inability to grasp reality. I'm 30 years old, struggling to cope with what I believe is my boyfriend, ex-boyfriend's, 41 years old, lack of a full sense of reality. To provide some context, this all started about 2 years ago, 3 months after we started dating, when he had an episode of acute psychosis and committed himself under the Baker Act. He was afraid of people breaking in the windows and thought someone had broken into his roommate's room, so he broke down his roommate's door. Since then, he has been functioning relatively well and appears to be of sound mind in casual conversations. However, he has occasionally mentioned that he still sees shadow beings but has learned to live with them. He doesn't want to discuss this further because he fears being labeled crazy. He also reaches conclusions that make no sense and refuses to listen to me or accept any evidence that contradicts his beliefs. The most notable and persistent example is his belief that I supply weed to the local dealer I have bought small amounts from before. Despite having no reason to think this and me offering proof and even sharing my GPS location, he refuses to believe me. He doesn't believe almost anything I say, which is stressful and odd. When I was recently in the hospital, he didn't believe what I told him the doctor said either. I'm fed up with being treated this way and constantly being accused of lying. I've told him to stay away multiple times, which is why I referred to him as my boyfriend, ex-boyfriend. However, he shows up anyway, acting as if it's a normal day. If I tell him to leave, he refuses and just sits on the couch, knowing I can't physically make him leave. Recently, he's been talking about missing his family out of state. I've encouraged him to go be with them, as it seems he takes out a lot of his negative emotions on me and might be happier there. But he responds that he'll do what he wants, either staying or going, and won't be chased off by me. I really don't know how to cope with any of this. I'm 30 years old, struggling with my boyfriend, ex-boyfriend's, 41 years old, disconnection from reality. After an episode of acute psychosis 2 years ago, he still sees shadow beings and holds irrational beliefs, like thinking I supply weed to a local dealer. He refuses to believe anything I say, even about my recent hospital visit. Despite telling him to stay away, he shows up and refuses to leave. He misses his out-of-state family, and I've encouraged him to go, but he insists on doing what he wants and won't be chased off. I don't know how to cope with this situation. I neglected to mention that his mother has been diagnosed as bipolar, so I often wonder if any of this behavior from him are symptoms of bipolar. I have attempted to bring this up to him, but he shuts me down and won't even consider the possibility. Story, how do I, F32, communicate to my best friend, F32, that her career goals are becoming an obstacle in our friendship? Hello everyone, I am in a kind of pickle with one of my very dear friends. She is very nice, talkative and social but very career-driven, which is a good thing, and I have been pushing her to do more with her life. She has been taking care of her sick dad for years and didn't go out much. I met 2.5 years ago and her dad unfortunately passed away in April. Since I met her, she started working a job to have more of a purpose, and then she got a second one since she felt like one wasn't enough, both government jobs, but still at junior level. Even last year we didn't do like a weekly hangout, more like once a month and a half kind of meet to do a catch-up of our lives. But since the beginning of the year we meet up just twice, once in January on my birthday and then unfortunately when her father passed. I have been trying to reach out every other week to check up on her and if possible meet up, but she just takes on every possible chore that her job gives her voluntarily, even if we have plans to get up the ladder faster by doing more than her job description. This was even before her father passed. The pickle is that when sometimes friends from outside the country or relatives come to our city, she makes time for them, but for me it feels like I have become a burden and she doesn't want to meet. I brought it up with her once after my birthday and she did tell me that she wants to focus more on work since she hasn't been able to due to her father's illness and really cares about me and considers me like family, but every attempt to hang out seems to be shut down because of work. We sometimes make plans and then she doesn't follow up with a meeting hour, so I text her. She then says that she is working so she cannot make it like today. She more often than not doesn't reach out to inform me about the cancelled plans. She's a great friend to me and I do care about her, so I was wondering how do I bring it up to her to meet up a little more often, still not weekly due to her work, but maybe once at every 2 months max since my feelings are getting hurt by this constant rejection, poor planning on her part. My best friend who is very career focused at the moment doesn't make any time for a meetup, cancels plans without telling me most of the time. How do I bring it up to her that this is hurting my feelings and our friendship? Story: how to tell if my 25F partner, 25M, is emotionally or verbally abusive. I am 25 years old and am starting to think that my relationship with 25 years old my boyfriend of about 1 year is not just toxic but abusive. He's always been quick to anger and a little jealous, but recently he's said and done things that are making me question my perceptions of myself and the relationship. I called a female friend recently who I hadn't spoken to in months, and we spoke for about 30 to 40 minutes catching up. He acted weird on the phone call and afterwards he exploded. He accused me of talking to her about other men and intentionally trying to cover the conversation. He said I locked the door to the bathroom, I was peeing. He said I turned the bedroom fan on so he couldn't hear. We turned the fan on to go to sleep and it was nearly 10 p.m. He said I left the room to hide the conversation. He was already in bed and I was trying to be respectful because he wakes up 3 hours before me. He refused to listen to my explanation. The next day he apologized profusely over text, which is a pattern in our relationship. Outbursts followed by long apologies the next day. Today, I worked a 10-hour shift while he was at home. I did a 50-hour week as my boss was out sick. I get home and I'm talking to him while opening the fridge and he goes past me and I accidentally shut the door on his hand that has a blister on it. Although his hand was fine, he turns to me and screams, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" in my face. I apologized and said although I was looking, I wasn't really seeing as my brain is fried and I'm tired. He proceeded to go off and then was even angrier when I was upset that he screamed in my face. He refused to apologize for that. That argument then derailed despite me trying to end it multiple times because it was no longer productive. We were just going in loops. I tried to turn and watch TV and he stood in front of the TV. I recorded part of our conversation. We're in a one-party consent state and in those 2 recordings, he called me a narcissist, a pathological liar, autistic, and an asshole. I want to upload those so people can hear his voice and the context because I'm really feeling insane right now, but I'm unsure if that's against this sub's rules. At one point, he realized I was recording and took my phone and threw it on the floor in the other room. I got up and got it and he seemed to back off from that once I told him me recording was legal in this state and that if he took my phone again, I would consider myself to be in actual danger and would leave. I've been thinking about leaving him, but it's hard as we live together. Now, I'm worried that I actually need to figure something out and quickly because I'm worried this is going to derail. He claims to love me and that I mean the world to him, but I once told him I wanted to break up and I'll never forget his response: "You deserve whatever I do, honestly." My 25 years old boyfriend 25 years old and I fight a lot, but I'm unsure if it's starting to become abusive. Story: I'm starting to catch feelings for my boyfriend's friend. My boyfriend who is 12 years older than me doesn't really work hard for us, he just works for his father's business and go in whenever while I work at a restaurant serving and his best friend works hard, so I feel like he would make a great partner. Me 20 years old and my boyfriend 32 years old have been together for almost a year now. We do get a lot of comments about our age difference, which is a little bigger than I'd prefer, but we are both very traditional. Where I live it's hard to find a guy that's trad, so I instantly fell for him. At first we had a lot of fun and I wasn't really staying with him all that often. I live an hour away so it was kinda hard to make time for staying with him with my work schedule and such. My hours got cut at my part-time job, so as I've been looking for a new job, I've been staying with him a lot more. I ended up getting a serving job in his town so I could spend more time with him because he truly does have a lot going on with his father being sick and some court situation. Ever since I started staying with him, I really got to see the real him. His father owns the business he works for, so he does as he pleases pretty much. We sometimes won't roll out of bed and start our days till 1 p.m. on a weekday. It sorta put a bad taste in my mouth because I told him he could leave me here alone and that it was totally okay, I'd clean up the house for him. He just doesn't work at all whenever I'm here, and he doesn't do much around the house, which would be okay if he was working, but he just sorta runs around all day doing little stuff. Although, his dad is in a wheelchair and does need some assistance with certain things, but it doesn't take all day, and his father even said, "When will you start working regularly again?" We've been hanging out with one of his good friends a lot recently who does blue-collar work and has been a Marine before. The more we see him, the more my heart sort of grows this feeling towards him. I would never cheat, but knowing he works hard long hours is a green flag in my eyes, and I feel with my traditional beliefs that he would be a great father and husband willing to work for his family and care for them. He is super respectful and has a big heart. I love my boyfriend now, but in a way he is very feminine, he doesn't really work much, and he also is very obsessed with how he looks, and not in a good way. As I'm at my serving job there for hours on end, I'll check his location and he will still be at the house. I've met a lot of guys who make sure they look presentable, but he is always primping in every single mirror he passes. He will give me his phone and ask me to take photos of him, and I don't mind doing it, but I just feel like on my heart this isn't who I should start my family with because he's so worried about him and never me or others, it's him all the time. He is selfish at times and I'm trying to bring him back down to earth, but I'm starting to give up. I feel terrible because every time we see his friend I can't help but imagine what it would be like with him. He is a very sweet and caring, humble guy. I just am wondering, should I stop bringing myself around him when he is with my boyfriend? Or should I tell my boyfriend he doesn't seem manly enough for me? I am worried about hurting his feelings. Story: thinking of stepping away from a 5-year friendship after she let her boyfriend come between us. My 30 years old friend Alice, 28 years old, and I initially bonded over shared trauma. Last year I stopped smoking due to the impact on my mental health. I'll have the occasional drink or edible, but my social life no longer revolves around getting intoxicated. Alice still binge drinks socially, gets high every day. When I turn down her offers to smoke or drink, she is visibly disappointed, repeatedly asking if I'm sure. Although my sobriety isn't a problem with my other friends, I sometimes cave to pressure from her. Recently I hosted Alice and her partner David for dinner. I texted her a few days prior explaining I was dealing with some family issues, not in the right headspace to entertain, suggesting we go out to eat instead. She talked me into hosting anyway, saying how excited she was, promising to make it stress-free for me. Spoiler alert, it was not stress-free at all. My partner had to leave early, so the three of us hung out in my living room afterwards. Despite my grief over said family troubles, I tried to put on a brave face. Alice produced a joint, I accepted, hoping it might relax me. For the next 30 minutes, I could feel myself talking too much about our upcoming trip for my 30th. David, who is very shy, didn't say much. At one point he returned from the bathroom saying he felt ill, was going home. I offered him my bedroom to lie down, but he insisted on leaving. Alice stayed and we went out dancing. 2 days later, Alice revealed David was hurt I had ignored him, asked what I had against him. I was confused because I recalled interacting with David that night. I told her the truth, that I hadn't meant to snub him. If I was less than socially adept, it was due to the weed. She kept repeating that I had ignored him. I asked for examples, but all she could say was that the conversation wasn't inclusive of him. I asked why she didn't do more to include him in the conversation then. She got upset, said I was trying to minimize my behavior and evade accountability. For the sake of our friendship, I agreed to apologize to him directly. She told me not to, as he wasn't ready. I was confused, but left it alone. She spent my birthday trip getting wasted at every opportunity. In a moment of sobriety, she again pressed me to come clean about why I ignored David. I got upset because I'd already told her the truth. She dropped it. The next day she gave me the silent treatment, then bought a bottle of tequila to drink on an empty stomach, while on psych meds. I confronted her. Cue the same argument. I decided to leave, enjoy the rest of my trip solo. I accepted her apology but expressed concerns about her drinking, which offended her. Since then, we've had other conflicts that have left me emotionally exhausted. I've had to fight tooth, nail to assert my boundaries. After our latest fight, she is eager to mend things, but I'm starting to think this friendship isn't healthy. I hate to throw away 5 years of friendship, but I feel I need to protect my peace. After my best friend accused me of ignoring her boyfriend, subsequently ruined my 30th birthday trip, I am having trouble trusting her, think it may be time to step away from the friendship altogether. Story: Am I overreacting that my boyfriend doesn't propose to me? Me 31 years old and my partner 31 years old are together for 7 years now, and we just bought our very first house last week. We have been together since we were 24 and we are not engaged, and I don't know if he ever want to propose because he's not really talking about it. Even when I ask him we just arguing about it, so I never thought about marriage when I was younger, but then when we both turned like 26 to 27 I started to show interest about it, and at the same time everybody around us, all our friends got engaged, had wedding, expected their first child, etc. And I mentioned him that I want to get engaged before I turn 30. He never said anything. And I just kept repeating myself and he just kept saying nothing. I felt guilty and bad for mentioning and saying things like this to him because I didn't want to put pressure on him, but at the same time I wanted to know his thoughts and also let him know what I want. We were already saving up for deposit to buy a house, and once he said that after we have the house we want he can buy a nice ring and propose, but right now he doesn't have £5,000 to spend on a ring. I already knew what ring I want, and that doesn't cost that much, and also I would never want him to buy me such an expensive ring anyway. So I told him this, and I sent him the rings I like, and I told him he can choose which one he wants to propose with. I just wanted him to know I don't expect anything expensive, I just want to see that he is serious too, just like me. His answer was that if he wouldn't be serious he would not buy a house with me. This was like 2 years ago. Since that, every holiday we go on, every night out together, every birthday, every family events we go together, I think he'll do it, but nothing. People around us keep questioning him about it and he just says, oh, our plan is to buy a house first and then I can afford a ring, but it's not our plan, just his. But it's awkward for me and it makes me angry because I already told him I don't want expensive ring and I wanted to get engaged before 30. Every time we talk about this we just arguing. He gets offended because I say what I think and what I feel, and then he doesn't really speaks to me for days. I just realized that we don't want the same things from life and it makes me sad. I'm 31 already and I don't want to say yes anymore to him because I feel he just ruined everything. I don't know what to do anymore because I can't have a serious conversation with him about this, and even if I would have one I feel nothing would change. I don't want to propose to him, that's just not me, and he would not want that either. I think the communication between us is very, very bad, and I don't know how to fix it because I know if I mention this he'll not talk to me. I just don't want to wait anymore, and I don't want to say yes anymore. And I hate this feeling. Even when I ask him we just arguing about it. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.